Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General Sessions, for the decision on the legal orientation program. I'm pleased to hear that you have responded to the concerns that Senator Moran and I raised. I would just point out that one of the other items in that letter was a request for information regarding the methodology of the efficiency study that is underway. So I would hope that that information would be forthcoming to us as soon as that's available.
I will make sure that happens.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on Senator Moran's question about the HIDA program, because that's one that has also been very important in New Hampshire, and I'm sure when you were there you heard how helpful it's been in addressing our opioid epidemic and actually capturing some of the drugs that have been coming across the border into New Hampshire. And I appreciate the interest in efficiency, although I've heard from the folks who participate in HIDA in New Hampshire that they are very happy where they are. But my question is, as Senator Moran pointed out, and as you acknowledged, the DEA is not a grant-making agency. So what is their plan for managing funding with this proposed move?
Well, we at the Department of Justice have tremendous experience in grant programs and managing. We will be very supportive of DEA, which is our subordinate agency, in helping them to establish that kind of activity. But again, I would say the actual funding, of course, will be Congress's decision. The leadership and the HIDA community organizations would remain the same, but their grant money would be managed from DEA, which I do believe would help make that a tighter and better relationship. They'd still have their own independence and their own leadership teams, but I think it could enhance that, and I do believe ONDCP probably never was created or expected to be a grant program of this kind.
And so, is there any assessment of what the cost of setting up that grant-making mechanism would be within
I believe there is some expense in the initial setup, but I believe we can be able to do the grant program. It's certainly no more expense than currently exists, and maybe better with our deep experience in grant making in the Department of Justice. So we would go from the basically the White House ONDC office, ONDCP, to the Department of Justice.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about that. As I said in my opening statement, I am hearing from police chiefs throughout New Hampshire about their concern that the expected funding from the Burn JAG program has not yet been forthcoming. So the Seventh Circuit released their decision on April 19th that the Justice Department exceeded its legal authority in placing conditions on Burn JAG. When you and I discussed this on the phone, you pointed out that win or lose, those grants would go out. So I just wondered what I should tell the police chiefs in New Hampshire about when they might expect funding.
Senator Shaheen, we intend to get that money out sooner is better than later. But the litigation is an important piece of litigation, and we placed only the most minor requirements on the grant program. We ask our state and local partners, if you want to get the Burn Law Enforcement Grant, we ask them to do two things. One was to give us notice 48 hours before an illegal alien who you've arrested for some crime is released, and to allow us to pick that individual up at the detention facility, rather than releasing them on the streets and having our ICE officers and others have to try to find a criminal that needs to be arrested, and that's a very dangerous thing, places law officers at risk. That's what the Homeland Security officials pleaded with us to ask for, so we pared it down to a minimal thing we ask of them. We didn't ask the police to interview people. We didn't ask them to arrest people for us or anything like that, only to give us notice before release and to allow us to pick the individual up far more safely at the detention facility.
Well, this is a longstanding congressionally mandated formula grant program. So why does DOJ think it can place conditions on this program that's been operating for so many years based on the mandate that Congress has given it? And could you also address whether you plan to hold on funding for fiscal year 18 in the same way that you've been holding it for 17?
Well, to the first part of your question, this is a statute Congress passed, 34 U.S.C. 10102A6, and it says the Assistant Attorney General of OJP shall exercise such other powers and functions as may be vested in the Assistant Attorney General pursuant to this chapter or by delegation of the Attorney General, including placing special conditions on all grants and determining priority purposes for formula grants. So we felt when we went to court that these minor conditions for receiving a federal grant were very reasonable, and we're deeply disappointed that the court has not, at least to this moment, seen itself able to agree. And we'll, of course, abide by the law, but we do want to review the situation and see if we cannot improve it.
And I'm out of time, but just briefly, I know that DOJ filed another motion with the Seventh Circuit on April 23rd. So do you expect to continue to go all the way up to the Supreme Court with your motions if you're denied again in the Seventh Circuit?
I'll have to talk with our lawyers. They worked hard on this case, and we've not seen. So one thing about it, it's one thing to deal with the merits. It's another matter to deal with the preliminary injunction. So we have an injunction that I think went beyond the law in the sense that the case was first raised in Chicago. It has its own unique set of laws and policies, but the judge issued an order that bound the entire United States. Many of those are perfectly happy to comply with these requirements of the Department of Justice. So it's a frustrating matter. It's a big deal, and I think I have to say I've been appreciative of our law enforcement leaders who I think by and large agree that these minimum requirements are legitimate. So they've been patient with us, but I am worried about it. We're working hard to bring it to a conclusion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. For states like New Hampshire, where we have no sanctuary cities, it puts us at a special disadvantage.